What's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to the Reinventing the Tattoo community. We're beaming out to several different places, so if you're watching, let us know that our streams are working by tagging a friend who loves tattoos or, let us know where you're beaming in from. All of these network shows, art jams, drawing groups, interviews, panels, and webinars can be watched anytime at reinventing247.com. While you're there, guys, enter to win a goodie bag with cool samples from Shine Cartridges, Raw Pigments, and D-Lies Pro. We have several weekly shows and drawing groups, too. Some really cool stuff happening all the time. If you go to YouTube, you can schedule and remind yourself for some of our upcoming events. Every Sunday at 1 p.m., we have our Reinventing drawing group with Jason Leeser. Every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, you can find myself, Gabe Ripley, and Jake Meeks with the Tattoo Weekly. Then Monday evenings at 9 p.m., we have our evening canon class with subscribers, led by Guy Aitchison. To join, subscribe to the canon at courses.reinventingthetattoo.com. Tuesday mornings, you can find Ricardo with his Reinventing drawing group at 10 a.m. Wednesdays at noon is the Tattoo Now show, and Thursdays at noon is the Tattoo Collecting podcast. Subscribers are also encouraged to join here for apprentices and fundamentals on Thursday mornings. The Reinventing Canon and other pro development courses can be found at courses.reinventingthetattoo.com. Before we get started, we want to say thank you to our sponsors for providing this community to you guys for free. We do have Alex at worldtattooevents.com. He's got the largest, most comprehensive resource for tattoo events in the world. Got rawpigments.co, an e-company that is tapping into the source with acrylic-free pigments that have been impressing artists across the globe. If you guys haven't tried them, sign up for one of those goodie bags at reinventing247.com to get your hands on some free samples. Also, thank you to Gabe at Tattoo Now, providing technology for tattooers, and the founder and inspiration behind Reinventing the Tattoo, Guy Aitchison. Find his Biomech Encyclopedia, DVDs, and machines, paintings, more, all at GuyAitchison.com. We also have several affiliates that we would love to say thank you to as well. The Fireside Tattoo Network, the Apprenticeship Diaries, and EcoFriendlyTattooSupplies.com. Throughout the show, we welcome positive comments and reviews on our channels and would love for you to follow us. If you'd like to host a Reinventing event, sponsor the community, or even guests on the Tattoo Weekly, contact us at management@reinventingthetattoo.com. Now, I'm going to be off in the background reading off comments. Say, hey, what's up? Let us know where you're beaming in from, like I said. And we're going to go ahead and kick off the show, guys.
Ricardo, how's it going today? Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Lauren. How are you? I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking.
Doing quite well over here. What do you have in the background today? Looks totally different.
Oh, yeah. It's always changing here. You know what I mean? I always have stuff all over the place. It's crazy. I try to keep it, separate, but sometimes it kind of melds in. But right now, let's see, this way? Yeah, this way, right here. Yeah. That's a painting that I'm doing for my son for Christmas. Now, I don't think that he watches too many of these shows, so I think it's okay to show everybody else for right now. And then later on, I'll be like, oh, yeah, well, I painted these while I was, on YouTube. So maybe you could watch my YouTube videos too. But that's one of his favorite musicians, Juice WRLD.
Okay.
Have you heard of him before?
No.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's different. Like, it's more like, I don't even know if it's rap or it's hip hop or what. It's definitely a different genre. Like, it's influenced by like rock music and some like emo kind of stuff, you know what I mean? Like, it's definitely more of an emotional kind of like rapping and stuff like that, like, a person's thoughts and stuff like that. But I've never really heard him. I mean, he's got some good beats and stuff like that. Like I said, his lyrics are very touching, you know what I mean? They're
okay.
But I would definitely check him out if you want to check out something new just for the hell of it even. But I've been listening to him recently because I know it's his favorite musician, so I'm trying to get in touch with that. And I was using his music as an influence for like the painting and stuff too, so I was like trying to pick up some of the subject matter and stuff like that in it. So
sure. And your painting speed or whatever could be influenced by the pace that kind of impacts the way you paint it.
Yeah, for sure. You know what I mean? Like, that's definitely the thing. I've been trying to listen to that while I'm painting this, and It's definitely, it is cool. You know what I mean? Like, you're right, because it definitely has a sense about it, right? Like the music kind of influences the way that you're painting or drawing and stuff like that. I've definitely picked up on that.
Sure.
And I know, like, when I was in junior high, I moved around quite a bit, and I ended up living in Peoria, Illinois for a little bit. And I was fortunate enough to be around this lady that was teaching portrait drawings. And I think it was my seventh grade year. And she was awesome. You know, she taught me so much about like drawing from the right side of the brain. I think she introduced me to that book originally at that time. It's crazy, man. Timing is crazy, right? But like, as far as our path goes, but she would play classical music in her classes. You know what I mean? So it was always awesome to be able to be in there, like be a part of this moment where you're just like, everything's just slowing down. You know what I mean? And relaxing our minds into like what it is that we're trying to achieve. I don't know if you guys do that very much, but I know in like some other shops I've worked in, it's really loud and there's like a lot of like metal music and stuff like that. And that's cool and all, but it definitely influences like your pace. You know what I mean? Like when you're tattooing and stuff like that, I've noticed that. So I keep it, try to keep it pretty chill in my shop. We either watch a movie or like, you know, listen to some pretty mellow music. Every once in a while we'll kick it up a little bit and throw in some old, like, you know, Doug Rapper or something like that, or some metal. But yeah. So it definitely does have an influence for sure. But man, that backdrop was awesome, Lauren. That Christmas scene is legit.
Yeah,
Definitely made you
Christmas time
feel.
and lights. I thought I'd do something a little different today.
It was awesome. Definitely very festive. And you know, I think this time of year, like, a lot of people have a lot of different emotions and stuff like that. I've noticed people being a little bit more vulnerable. I don't know about you, but like some of the clients that I've had lately have been talking a lot more about like things that they have going on in life and stuff, which is pretty impacting for sure. Yeah, you know, we're here again on Thursday morning. Thank all of you guys for tuning in. Thank all of you guys for the comments and the nice messages that I get from you guys from time to time, talking about, you know, how it touched you to hear some of the things that we talk about here. I talk a lot about like for me, my art is like an emotional attachment, right? Like there's like a lot of influence as far as the way I perceive these images, with the way that I also perceive the way that we're able to manifest our lives, you know, and picking apart these emotions and realizing what it is that we're actually in control of, right? So I think today, as per usual, we'll kind of talk a little bit about some of that stuff and how I think it influences my perception on lighting, which is what we're covering this month with Guy. So I thought we'd go ahead and jump right into that. Today I wrote down some notes, so don't mind me if I'm looking down every once in a while. Okay, I'll try to remember to look up and make some eye contact with my own camera. But today we're going to talk about sense and sensibility in our drawings, right? In our art, in our life. I think we all know what sense is. It's basically, you know, perceived by a sense or senses, such as like our sight, our hearing, our smell, our taste. You know, and the reason that I think about that in our artwork is because when we see images, paintings, drawings, tattoos, there's these emotions that can be invoked in us. You know what I mean? And there's quite a bit to do with that as far as visually, with lighting. You know, you can have dramatic lighting that can kind of impose this stoic kind of look or this perception, like so a lot of the old Roman sculpture tattoos that you see. You know what I mean? A lot of the old Greek tattoos that you see of like Zeus and stuff like that. It's very, very powerful kind of, you know, angular kind of shading and stuff like that. A lot of that, and I see it a lot in a lot of tattoos, and it's when it's done well, it's amazing because it definitely invokes that feeling of the same sense that you would gather from like the statues. I've personally never seen them in real life, but the photos that I see are definitely invoking of that emotion. So I think about that as far as our senses go whenever we're trying to conceive these pictures, or whenever we're trying to illustrate what it is that we're viewing. And I think a lot of that has to do with the overall voice that we start to develop. Either we recognize it earlier on, which not a lot of us do, and it's very fortunate if you do, However, for me, I've fumbled through quite a bit of trial and error, and lately constructive criticism, to be able to hear or see my own voice, even in my own artwork. A lot of times for all of us, we kind of go through and we're doing these things and we don't have a real like sense of like rhyme or reason or like timing or any kind of like direction sometimes, and we're just doodling, and sometimes we just keep messing with things until we think it looks right. The thing of it is that like you keep messing with it to look right as far as the way that you perceive it, right? So that's your voice, that's your voice trying to come through. You might think, and it can be argued, that all you're trying to do is match up the image that you're looking at. But you can be in a room with several different artists looking at the same subject matter, and they have slight differences to them for sure, unless you're demonstrating an exact technique that you've been taught. You know what I mean? And replicating that as thoroughly as possible. But even then, it's still filtered through yourself, right? So there's always this augmented kind of sense of the image that you're looking at. So that's part of the senses. So sense and sensibility. Sensibility would be like a stimulus or other things that make you react in a certain way, like I was talking about, that stimulus to the image, that sensation that you get, the ability to appreciate and respond to complex emotional or aesthetic influences. I think that has a lot to do with our perceived notions, like I was mentioning. For us as artists, it has a lot to do with, our inward dialogue. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I've spent a large portion of my career as attempting to be an artist as well as I could, with this negative notion of my pictures, my drawings, my tattoos just aren't good enough, right? And I think we all struggle with that. I think a lot of people on a human basis struggle with that inner monologue. It's like in Austin Powers, like he has no inner monologue, right? But we struggle with this difficulty of like, understanding that our own worth, because in our own minds, we're already putting ourselves down. So how can that not be what becomes our reality? You're talking to yourself, you're telling yourself all these negative things and stuff all the time. It's going to come to fruition, right? The manifesting your own destiny kind of thing. So it's important to kind of recognize that and start to question it whenever you start to sense it. Whenever you start to realize that that's the case, you have to start making questions on it at that moment. Like for me, I've started questioning that moment and asking myself, is this a negative or a positive thought? And I think of ways that we can change this. Like the way that we create, we have the ability to make our reality whatever it is that we want it to be. Like I was saying before, just for example, when we're doodling and we're trying to make this image as well as we can, we're trying to make it look to what we perceive as finished as possible, right? So we change it. You take that moment and you get frustrated, you get over the frustration, or you frustrate your way all the way through the drawing and you end up crumpling it up and throwing it away, right? So like one way or another, you finished it and there's an emotion attached to it. And I think it's like our reality. It's our real world. It's our interaction with each other. And that can be the basis for a lot of arguments sometimes, a lot of misunderstandings between two people. So it's important to start kind of checking yourself whenever that comes into play. I think in a sense, our sensibility can be considered not only a perception, but an emotion or an internal state of being, is what I wrote. And I can't just, I don't know. That's really the way that I feel about it. Whether that's involuntary or voluntary, it comes back to that thing of which way do you want to go with it, and how do we want to create? How do we want to create our lives? How do we want to create our art? So, yeah, I think that's about it on that kind of an idea. But I did remember this quote by Seneca, and how did it go? You begin at once to live, and you count each separate day as a separate life, right? So like every day we're presented with this opportunity to make the day the best that we can. Today's the day. Today is the day, meaning that this is the last one that we can live. Like we're all going to end up in this place. We all share this common trait, our mortality, right? And it's important to remember that. It's important to remember that whenever we're in this funk of like, I can't draw, I can't see these things right. You know what I mean? I can't, what is everybody going to say about my pictures, about my drawings, about my tattoos? You have to remember that no matter what, it's always going to be okay. It's never going to be the end until it is the end. So you might as well just give it your best go. Yeah, I really like that quote. There's a lot, I follow him and I read a lot of like Marcus Aurelius stuff too. And I think that that whole stoic approach to things is pretty awesome, especially when it comes to our emotions and stuff like that, and understanding them, not ignoring them, not running away from it, but embracing them and kind of understanding it. And for me, that's a major influence on my artwork. Yeah, so that being said, let's go and dip into some actual art, right? I think what we're going to be covering today is tonality in our artwork, the overall tone, the overall value of our tones, right? Let's see, where do we start? So as children, I've talked about this before, as kids, we're taught lines. It's in our nature, it's in like our language, it's in the way that we convey our ideas. You read and you write, right? We're taught that these lines have this form of language. And so when we're trying to draw, what we do is we end up replicating what we see, what we're trying to translate in the same sense. So we start taking line work, which we know as letters, font, alphabets, sound, and we try to make the image with the line work. Tonal values, what I'm going to try to show you today is the way that we can perceive things without those lines, right? We want to try, and as tattoo artists especially, we are so, it's drilled into our head so well, so prominently actually, that we want to create as much of a solid line as possible. And it works as far as the rules, these like rules of, you know, tattooing. There are foundational properties that do form and function well in our tattoo work. You know, it's another medium. It's not canvas, it's not silk, it's not cotton, it's not a wood panel. You know what I mean? Our tattoos are on a living body. It's going to change. It's going to be, you know, subjected to like external sources as far as the person that wears it. Like, are they in the sun all the time? Do they take care of themselves? Do they eat well? These are a lot of factors that kind of come into play. You know, are they construction workers during the summer and they just get beat up by the sun all day? Do they wear sunblock? You know, those are a lot of questions that come into the process of tattooing. So line work like that can work really well, but we're not talking about tattoos today. I'm talking about the fact that we are tattoo artists, that is drilled so prominently into our mind and our function that we forget about these other values in our work, in our art, that can help create or help you see your tattoos better, or even your paintings or your drawings, if that's what you're here for, you know. Let's see. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and start breaking down some of the qualities that I look for, okay? A lot of times there's a lot of old masters, you know what I mean, that I might, if you want to write this down, you can, or if you've already known about it, in a representational kind of art form, you know, Da Vinci or Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres or Jean-Francois Millet. I hope I'm pronouncing Jean, I believe is the name. Check those out. Caravaggio is one of my favorites, you know what I mean, as far as this representational art. And what you want to do is when you're looking at these guys, you want to realize that these are the people that started interpreting at first how we perceive light on objects, right? And how to translate that without these lines, you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of other artists out there that are more, Picasso, for example, that leans more towards like line work. in their artwork, in their form. Dali even. That's more of like the more Americanized kind of function of art, or Eastern or Western. I'm sorry, we'll just say Western. But they were the ones that started talking about light, the perception of how it hits these forms, right? Perspective, their use of perspective in it, and the use of the golden ratio as far as their compositions go, and then like the rule of threes. You know what I mean? Segmenting these images in an interesting way that we don't even realize that the composition under it is influencing us to look at certain areas by the use of light, by the use of perspective, and by the use of like these fundamental rules like golden ratio and the rule of threes. They also used, they were also understanding of how to capture form basics and advanced knowledge of forms. So like the circle becomes the sphere, and the square becomes the cube. It's as simple fundamentals, but so essential in what it is that we're going to be covering with lighting and stuff like that. So again, we'll go back and talk a little bit about this instinctive way of like seeing images, and how our innate want is to like draw it with line work, right? So we need to kind of perceive things in a more tonal value kind of sense. And the other thing that we're going to talk about too is like contour lines, right? We're so influenced by line work still that the contour is like one of the first things that we'll kind of try to pay attention to as far as proportions and stuff like that. I like to draw with tonal value. I like to paint with tonal value, and I think that it helps influence the viewer to be able to see this in more depth and more of an emotional kind of embodiment to the overall work, right? So yeah, I think that's about it as far as what I had to say. But it kind of goes back to what I was saying about, like, as far as our sense and sensibilities, what it is that we perceive and what it is that we want to convey, and the kind of emotions that we're trying to attach to these images. You know what I mean? So yeah, sense and sensibility, contour lighting, or not contour lighting, but tonal values, tonality in our artwork, right? But make sure to check those artists out if you guys get a chance to. So let's see here. So yesterday I went through, let me pull up some images real fast. Yesterday I went through and I set up a still life. I go to insert, they're different. I'm sorry guys, I should have been a little more prepared for this. I apologize. This is the life of the artist. Insert a photo.
Well, hey Ricardo, Kier and Atomic say what's up in the chat. So hello from everybody to you guys.
How's it going, guys?
Atomic
Good to hear from you today. Oh man. Today is that day.
Yep.
Gotta get it up and do it, man. All right, so I set up this still life, and I put it in the Reinventing the Tattoo app in the group exercises, I believe. I think I put up both a color version and a black and white version. We're gonna be working off the black and white version today. I just have it pulled up here, but we're gonna make some adjustments to it because I want us to get rid of like some of these background lights that kind of help form these shapes, or I'm sorry, shape these forms. Is what I meant to say. So let me see if I can share my screen. Good to hear from you guys, Atomic and Kier. Thank you so much for tuning in. Share the screen real quick. As always, I've said this before, I'll say it again. What I like to do is I like to draw sitting back. I like to kind of keep my canvas at arm's length. You know what I mean? And I like to try to be able to take in the entire picture. Oh, look at that. I left the extension cord in there. What do you know? That's funny. We will not include that in our drawing. How about that? I've got it on a separate screen. I'm going to kind of take away some of this background real fast. And all I'm doing is going in with a black flat brush, basically using a darker tone. Get rid of some of this. Just knock it down a little bit more. Now, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna focus on some tonal values as far as the lighting goes, right? This is kind of like a direct light source kind of study. But we are going to be paying attention to today. Orange. What we're going to be doing is we're going to take three different values from this drawing. Let's go ahead and start that anywhere. We're going to take our darkest dark. Oh, hold on 1 second. There we go. It's full opacity now. We're going to take our medium tone right about here. Oh, it's too dark. Right about there. There we go. Now we'll take our lightest tone. Rule of threes, right? I talk about it all the time. Triangles, omnium perfectum, all that good stuff. Golden ratio, triangle, triangle, triangle. Everybody always jokes about that, but it's true. So what we're going to be focusing on is the way that we're going to separate the foreground from the background using a simple midtone and finding our lost and found edges, right? We need to get out of our mind, get out of our head out about line work. All we're going to be doing is focusing on the way the differences of, let's say that when you have a pencil and you turn it on its side, right? What happens is that when you use it as a flatter angle, you get a broader sense of contrast. Now, what happens when you hold a pencil a little bit more vertical? It's pretty simple. You're going to get a thinner form of contrast, which would be for us to look like a line work. This is all pretty simple stuff, right? So with that in mind, we're going to be using our midtone to take our values and we're going to create this image using simple values. Darn it. That's what happens when you draw on the same layer. Oh well, whatever. No big deal. But we're going to be focusing on how much different and in value these shapes are in the foreground. Here, here, here. So that's almost going to be our canvas even. We're going to see how simple it is to kind of create this depth that we're looking for in some of our pictures, and we're lacking our depth, right? It's important to remember that there's got to be a separation in our lost and found edges. This is what's going to help us break away from this idea of line work, of contour lines, and stuff that's simple and goes back to, again, the whole like line drawing thing. We got to break out of that. So with that being said, we're going to go and get started on this guy. And I'm just going to draw it down here at the bottom. I'll try to get as close as I can to the image, but we'll see what happens. Sometimes it doesn't work out that well, but that's okay. I feel like Bob Ross, talking to myself. Wonder how he did it. Wonder how Bob did it all those years.
Jason is joining us this morning.
All right. Jason, my man.
Whatever happened, I didn't do it.
How are you this morning, man?
I am good. I'm good. I'm sorry for running late. I'm feeling a little bit burnout, so took a little bit of extra time to sleep.
It's good for you, man.
So
I'm sorry to hear that you're feeling kind of burnt out.
well, I mean, I've been up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning every night for the past 2 weeks, just working on paintings.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that'll get to you when you wake back up at 9 and you're running off 5 or 6 hours of sleep for multiple days in a row. It wears you down.
It does, doesn't it?
It really does. And it can start to affect your mood and everything like that. So every now and then I just like to take some time, get a bit of extra sleep, take a step back and think about things a little bit more. So
right on. That's
I
awesome.
to apologize for running late this morning.
Oh, dude. I appreciate you being here, man. So there's no need to apologize about that at all.
Well, maybe I want to.
Well, thank you.
I really like what you were saying about using that mid-tone to help separate those objects.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you have you found that works pretty well for you?
Well, I find the mid-tone to be pretty much the common ground in all of my mid-range areas, if that makes any sense.
Yes, it does.
If I have multiple subject matters, some in the foreground, some more towards the background, and obviously some right smack dab in the middle, but I want them all to be focal points and focal objects. I find that it's very easy to go through and stick in that middle third of value.
Yep.
To really help define and differentiate those objects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like crazy to see it happening too. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times it's just almost like a magic kind of. Have you ever seen those what is it, like those how do they do it? The spray paint kind of like outer space scenes and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's always fun too, because it's kind of a prime example of that kind of an idea where you're using like midtones and stuff like that to kind of illustrate, the whole, the piece as a whole at first, like the colors that are in the background, especially that.
Yeah, I think midtones are super important because once you have your midtones set, you can always push and pull light and dark, and that's what really helps create those edges.
Yes, dude, exactly.
But if you don't have your midtones set yet, you're trying to be super careful not to go too dark. Say you're working from like a pure white surface. You're trying not to go too dark because you don't want to miss that specific tone. And if you're working from dark to light, which is the way a lot of oil painters prefer to work,
yep.
They'll go through and it's like, okay, well, now I have to watch about getting too much contrast here.
Yes.
But if you start with a midtone, it's not going to be an issue.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You know what, to be honest with you, man, I'll approach a lot of my tattoos that same way too. Like, especially with black and gray tattoos. It's always good to kind of like, I'll do almost the entire shape with that midtone range first, depending on the overall effect and how much skin tone you actually want to show through for that, the overall saturation, of course. And like when I say that, when I'm talking about the overall saturation, I mean the highlights, because, a lot of people rely on white ink to kind of like create those highlights for you, which, we all know that like if you don't have enough contrast, those highlights aren't going to mean anything. So like if you're using a lighter or softer tone for your tattoos, it's always good to kind of go through and use the skin tone as the highlights, especially if you're using like lighter tones for the overall piece, right? Very minimal black, and a lot of times there's like softer tones throughout the entire piece. That makes sense.
It does. In fact, it makes so much sense to the point that, you know, when I first, you know, for the first 5 years of tattooing that I was, you know, doing tattoos, the studio I was at the time didn't even have one. No one even ordered it.
Right.
And they said, if you can't do a tattoo and have your skin tone be your highlight, then if you can do that and can do that effectively, then by all means use white all you want. You know, and I was still getting my feet wet because I was only 5 years in. So I was like, okay.
Right.
You know, and it taught me a very important lesson, you know, just leaving that flesh tone, which by the way, is a mid-tone.
Mm-hmm.
That is a mid-tone for anyone out there that's watching. Natural flesh tone is by default a mid-tone. So if you can have enough contrast in the rest of the piece, that mid-tone will instantly become a highlight.
It's interesting that you say it like that. I can totally see what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like starting out from a mid-tone, working dark enough and having enough contrast in there. And then all of a sudden you look at the areas that aren't tattooed yet and you're like, oh, wow. Oh, wow. Wow. Like you look at the rest of the arm or the rest of the leg or the rest of the flesh tone, and you know, you can tell it's a mid-tone, but when you look at that tattoo, that skin tone, that flesh tone by default is super bright.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, man. It's so funny too, like when you're first starting out, you're like, oh, white, I'm just gonna put it everywhere, dude. And then it comes back a couple years later and you're like, it's kind of like yellowish, or it's not as bright as I remember it being. And why is everything else around it look so light and stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's white when used in large areas is not very appealing.
Not at all. Not even a little bit, man.
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. You have a lot of work going on today?
Just working on a couple of smaller things on a friend of mine, Nikki. Nothing super crazy, you know, but she wanted to get as much done today as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
She always likes to come in and get like a, you know, couple of like softball sized tattoos done all in one day.
Okay.
Cool. You know, been tattooing her for quite a while.
I love those clients.
She's got some cool pieces.
Nice, man. That's good to hear. What's the subject matter, if you don't mind us asking?
So it's a combination of a rose and a paw print. Yeah. So she came to me with this idea of like having this paw print inside of a flower. And I was like, and the picture she showed me is like an idea of what she was going for. Wasn't, how can I say this without?
It wasn't the best idea for a tattoo.
It could have used some improvement.
Yeah.
Maybe a second or even a fourth, you know, bit of improvement.
I see.
It was not up to par. We'll leave it there.
Okay. Oh, good.
And and I was looking at it and I was like, okay, what do you like about this?
Mm-hmm.
What do you not like about this? You know, what is it that you see in this that really appeals to you? And you know, got some feedback from her and I said, okay, so from what I'm hearing you say, this is what you're trying to achieve as far as this look.
Mm-hmm.
She said, yes. Oh.
Did we lose you?
Sorry, I got a spam call.
Oh, I hate those, man.
Yeah, it's like they won't leave me alone.
No, they don't leave me
Apparently,
alone.
they've been watching the YouTube and they found out I'm a really nice guy, and
Yeah.
now they think they can take advantage of it.
Yeah. You know, I get spam calls all the time. It's like these guys from the power company and stuff, and they're like, "Hey, you want to pay us some money?" I'm like, "No, you're a spam caller. Don't call me back." I'm just joking.
Oh, I get the auto warranty calls at least.
Oh
4
yeah,
times.
dude. Big time, right? Big time.
And you know, I have to say, the one thing that really pisses me off about these spam calls is that I used to pick up the phone for every single thing that called.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, you know, spam calls or not, I used to pick up the phone because there are some people out there that are calling me. I don't have every single important phone number stored, right? If I get a call from, you know, Austin, Texas, from an Austin, Texas number, I'm not going to know who that is. And if they decide not to leave a message, well, I don't know if it's, you know, a hospital calling me. I don't know if it's a police department calling me. I don't know if something happened to a relative of mine. I don't know if you went out there and you got into trouble and now I have to bail you out. Like, and how can I be there for a friend and be supportive of my friends if I can't, you know, pick up my phone and answer a phone call?
Right.
So it's kind of ruined that for me, and that's what really gets to me.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for saying that. You know, if you needed me to, if I needed to call that late, pick up. Thank you, man. It's awesome.
Does that go for me too, Jason? Because you never know. I've had to use those resources before.
Listen, both of you, and this is not giving you carte blanche to go out and do whatever you want. Okay.
I was gonna say,
do not take advantage of this. But if something were to happen with either of you, one phone call and I'm there.
Oh, that's really nice of you, man. Yeah, that rules, dude. Thank you.
But that's the way it is for me and my friends. If they need me, I'm there, and if I need them, they're there. You know, and I know you guys got my back, so there's not a question of that there.
This is the way.
At least I think you do.
I think you're good, Jason.
Yeah, I think you're good, bro.
Yeah, but if you guys, you know, if something ever happens, you need me to bail you out, call me, let me know. I'll figure something out.
Cool. I've had that happen twice already in my on the road going to conventions, so
yeah, give me a call. Let me know.
We'll be there.
I will do whatever I have to do.
Who are you gonna call? Jason Leeser.
Yeah, pretty much. Now, there are some friends that have taken advantage of that in the past. And like, fortunately, I haven't had to do that for anyone in the past, like 8 years, 9 years. But, you know, as long as it's not abused, you know, I have no problem.
That fucking rules, man. So here we are doing this drawing. I've got it caught up a little bit in the details, but I'm still putting things together in their right places. And all you can see is how I'm implementing these tonal values to create the edges. There's no lines whatsoever yet. It's all representational. It's all very suggestive. Is another way I've heard that this kind of like rendering has been explained as suggestive, which I love that term, that phrase, because it lends to the idea that the person that's viewing it is the one that determines what it is that they're seeing. Right. I love that idea. I've had some tattoos that I've done off of sketches that I've had that the person that got it was the determining factor in why he placed this tattoo that I drew on his arm. It was a picture of a lady with a skull and some cherry blossoms and stuff like that. His meaning behind it was entirely different than mine, but the fact that he wanted it was awesome. And what he wanted it for was even more incredible to me too, because he had a pretty serious loss in his life. And it reminded him of that loss. It kind of influenced him on the reason for getting it. And I had no idea about it. And it was pretty cool to be a part of that moment. And it was pretty cool to be able to see that actual idea in play when it came to suggestive art. Got this crying Buddha back here, or weeping Buddha. Do they call it weeping Buddha? I think.
Weeping or laughing?
He's the weeping Buddha. He's got his face and his legs and his hands and his legs.
I've always liked the happy laughing Buddha.
Yeah. Me too.
Or the pensive Buddha, the one that's, just sitting down, staring off like, why is there air?
What are you doing
That was
here,
funny.
human?
He's contemplating the meaning of life.
Yeah. That's what the Buddha's all about, though,
Well, Buddha, a lot of that's about reaching enlightenment,
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily about, why are we here right now? Because that question was already answered, right? We are here to achieve enlightenment.
Yep.
So the question then becomes, what do we have to do in order to achieve that heightened state of consciousness, that enlightenment?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit different. Some people have called it a play on words, but, there's a very different outlook between those two philosophies. So not to get so philosophical on you this morning.
No, dude, I love that stuff, man. This is part of the reason that I love having conversations with you, Jason. Is I share those kind of combos with you, these deep thought kind of conversations, and they're great. Like, it's one of the reasons that I enjoy you. You know what I mean? It's easy to talk about these influences that are all around us all the time, and we don't take a lot of time sometimes to kind of appreciate those moments. And one of the things I enjoy about you, for sure.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure, man.
And I appreciate you.
All right,
I always like to try to equate philosophy to the world of art.
Yes.
And the different types and forms of art. Some people might look at a painting and say, well, what is it? Right?
Exactly.
And they might not understand what it is that they're looking at. And that's totally fine. There might be other people out there that accept it for what it is and then say, what does this mean?
Mm-hmm. Go on. I enjoy that.
Because once again, call it a play on words if you wish, but there are two different ways to look at everything. You can either accept the way that things are and then try to figure out, what does this mean to me?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can sit down and try to debate what that thing is. And if you're stuck at that what is this kind of stage, if you're stuck at that what is this level, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to get to what does this mean.
Yeah. Or what does this mean to me even?
Right.
Right, because that's what it boils down to, is like, how does that influence you? What does it mean to you? How do you apply it? We all have the same access to all the same information. And the fact is that, like, we don't listen to ourselves enough. And when we do listen to ourselves, most of the time it's a very negative kind of outlook. We give way to our negative self-talk more so than we do, like, actually realizing that we can manifest whatever it is that we're looking for, which is that whole state of enlightenment that you're talking about.
I would agree with that very, very strongly. I would. Because, you know me, and you've known me long enough now to know that I'm probably one of the most self-critical people that is alive.
I can,
But I refuse to let that stop me from doing what I'm doing. And I refuse to let that impact my progress. Because the minute I start to let that impact and my own negative thoughts and criticisms, the second I start to let that impact who I am, that's when I'm truly failing.
Yep, exactly, dude. Exactly. That's awesome to hear you say it like that, because that's exactly it. Truly failing is a very good way to like enunciate that for everybody. You know what I mean? And for yourself, is because like failure is not a real thing. You know, it's not real. It's only real when you allow it to be, and when you give in to that interpretation of, oh man, I just might as well quit. Just don't want to do this anymore. You know, and I'm not good enough. Blah blah blah. It just leans so much way to like a more negative conversation with yourself. And I agree with you completely. It's an awesome way to hear you say it, because man, that's exactly it. Nailed it.
It's the difference between not succeeding, right, and then failing.
Right.
You can not succeed at something, but that doesn't mean that you fail.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I like that. I like that a lot.
I'm actually going to shut my video off here for a minute while I eat breakfast, because no one wants to watch me eat.
Okay. Sounds good, man. Thanks.
I mean, maybe you do, but I mean, I don't think you do. So
no, I'm good. Yeah, the sense of ourself is so influential in our artwork. That's the way that I see it. The sense of yourself and the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you accept criticism, the way that we apply it. This year has been so monumental to me. Meeting Jason and Bruno and Kier, and meeting Guy and Lauren and Gabe. It's been an incredible journey for me this year. And if I would have done what I normally would have done, which is just listen, not ask any questions, not jump on there, not open myself up to those moments, because I thought that I would just do nothing but fail, which is what I've always done in the past. I've always given in to that. Maybe next time. You know what? There's always going to be tomorrow. I'll try tomorrow. Like, it's okay. I slept in or something like that. You know, like you make the time. We make so much time for just other dumb stuff. We make time for our jobs. We make time for all these obligations that we don't want to go to. You know what I mean? Like these parties sometimes that you're like, oh, I just don't really want to go, but you should go. That's the other part of it too. You should go, because you never know what's going to happen once you get into those moments that you think that you don't want to do these things. However, on the contrary side of it is that like we give into so many things like that so often. Why do we not just allow ourselves to give into ourselves, into this idea that we can do well, that we can do better for ourselves? Like Jason was talking about, I'm going to keep trying. I don't understand that. It's so crazy to me to think that like we are so comfortable with allowing ourselves to be negative all the time. And I don't know if it's because we've just gotten used to it. I don't know if it's just me that feels that way. I think that I've talked to a lot of other people that feel the same way that I do whenever I convey that notion. So I don't think it's just me, but it's just so incredible how we lend into that negative self-talk so much, and it just debilitates us. It's incredible. What a simple nod of, this is one of my hardest things that I've ever done, and embracing that fear. It's so incredible what that can give way to. Blows my mind. And I think it's influential in our artwork more than we give it credit for.
Without doubt. You know, if you look at the artwork that is created by artists, a lot of times you can see a reflection of their own personality within the type, style, medium, and construction of that work of art.
Exactly, dude.
Well,
exactly. Yes, exactly. I agree with you, man. Just the perception of it, even. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
As simple as just the concept of what it is that you're approaching. It's we're all given the same task. Let's say we're all given the same task. Like you go up and give a speech, right? Like we're all going to have a little bit of anxiety over it. We're all going to interpret it, what it is that we're going to talk about differently. And so like we all go at it in such a different way that it presents itself in such a different manner. There's some people that can either fake it till you make it kind of mentality, and they do it, right? I'm not really like that. I'm become more of the sense of like, man, if this is making me nervous, I'm going to say this is fucking making me nervous. And it seems to help out for me. People will interpret that in however the way that they want to, but I know my intention behind it is what I intend on being is just more honest and genuine about things. So I agree with you though, Jason. It is one of those things that lends to that overall style, that overall feel of the artwork. And I think it's the reason that we gravitate towards certain artists when other people will look at the same thing. Like we had that conversation on Sunday about Pollock, right?
Yeah.
And I was mentioning the fact that like it's hard for me to interpret what it is that I'm trying to do, what I'm supposed to see, and without the knowledge of like the gentleman in the chat, which was amazing to hear, is like, man, the fractals that went into it, like all that knowledge that goes into that painting and not being able to be replicated ever again. That's incredible. It's incredible. And I would have never known unless that guy was in that room. Because I had no interest in Pollock. I wouldn't even really look it up, which I should have done, but I would have never looked it up even. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah.
I always find stuff like that fascinating, and don't get me wrong, and I know some of you that might have heard me talk about this before already know what I'm going to bring up, but I'm a huge fan of all different types and forms of art, with very few exceptions. And I'm not going to go into my hour and a half long rant about certain artists because I know you guys don't want to hear that. But there are certain artists out there that I almost feel like they're just doing the bare minimum. They're not exactly paying attention to how much effort can I put into this? How can I really convey this idea or this expression or this emotion in the most effective manner? They're just going through and doing the bare minimum they can do and then turning around and selling something for millions of dollars. And I'm very jealous of that. I'm not going to lie. But I do appreciate people that really push the boundaries and make you think, when you look at the work of art that they do. What am I looking at? How is this affecting me? What was their intention here? What kind of emotion am I experiencing when I look at this? And that's a big thing for a lot of artists. They're trying to draw the viewer in and have the viewer experience some type of an emotion within that work of art, right? That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to evoke that emotion.
Yep.
Some artists are very effective with that.
Yes. And that's what I was saying about like the way we perceive things, the way we see it. Like a lot of times you don't even realize that you're drawing something that's going to be influential on somebody else. You know what I mean? Like your intention behind it might be entirely different than the way the person that is viewing it perceives it. And that also has me going back to that idea of like, subjecting yourself to criticism and stuff like that and putting yourself out there and putting your work out there, right? Because there's sometimes some things that other people see that you aren't conveying because you were behind that filter, and you have these other people that are viewing it, and it helps out tremendously. And it helps you find your voice that much faster. You know what I mean? If that's your goal. And I agree with you, Jason. Work, draw as much as possible. This isn't something, once you see somebody and they've achieved the level of somebody like Guy Etchison or like somebody like all these other big name tattoo artists, Nico Hurtado, Philippe Blue, like for example, Philippe Blue, Jesus, man, like that guy has been tattooing and drawing since he was born. He was raised in a family of tattoo artists, man. Like that's what he did. He eats, breathes, and sleeps it. Like, how can you not be as influential and as a pivotal legend of tattooing or artwork as him, or Guy? And that's the work that has been put into this effort, into this acknowledgement of like trying to better yourself, trying to make your craft better, giving it your all, enveloping it and embracing it and like learning it. and ingesting it, dude. It's incredible. So like once you are out here and you're looking at Instagram and you're following all these tattoo artists, you're like, oh, I'm not good enough. You have to think about the hours of effort that has been gone into some of these people's lives and their craft. And I think you and I have talked about that quite a bit too, Jason. So that's awesome.
Well, I think the important thing to remember when you're looking at other people is that, you know, when you're looking at other people and other artists out there in the world, look at them for inspiration.
Yes.
You know, look at them to drive yourself. But at the end of the day, the only person you should ever compare yourself to is who you were yesterday.
Yeah, dude. Boom. There it is. Nailed it. Heck
Who
yeah,
you were
man.
yesterday is the person to be.
Yep.
What are you doing to improve? What are you doing to get better? What are you doing to be a better person? You know, what are you doing to really try to get yourself outside of your comfort zone to push the bounds of what you can do?
Yes, dude. Yes. Amazing.
It could be something as simple as saying, you know what? I'm going to get to the studio 15 minutes early today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get all set up. I'm even going to have my stencils run before my clients ever even get to the studio. You know, or if you work in a street shop, I'm going to get there and I'm going to have out a whole bunch of different designs of things that I really want to do, so that way when someone walks in, you know, they might already have an idea in their mind, but then this way they can see the stuff that I want to do and say, oh, wow, I didn't even think of that. You know, what are you doing today to improve yourself over who you were yesterday?
Yeah. That's a good way to think about it, man. That's perfect. Thank you for sharing that idea today. A concept. I couldn't agree with you more, man. I think that's where I go whenever I think about like things that have held me back for such a long time, and stopping at truly making that decision, that voluntary choice to start saying, nope, no more. I've lived like that for too long. I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be that way anymore. And it sounds foreign as all can be, man, but like it's sometimes something that seems so complex can be very simple. And I think that's exactly it. Like, who do I want to be today? And who was I yesterday? And it goes back to that Seneca quote, you know, about like, today is live it like it's your last one.
Yep.
Every moment.
You know, there's a line from a movie that, you know, I think about quite often. And it's, you know, when you lay down to go to sleep at night, are you happy with the person that you are? Because if you're not, and if you know you're not living the best way possible, well, it's time to start getting square.
Yeah.
You know, look at who you were yesterday. I mean, a lot of this takes a lot of self-reflection. Self-reflection takes time. You know, I grasp that. I do. I've spent a lot of time just drawing and painting in the evenings, surrounded by no one but my cat.
Yeah.
You know, listening to podcasts, listening to, you know, just very, very like transient music, you know, just really reflecting on who am I? Who am I as a person? Who was I yesterday? And what do I need to accomplish tomorrow in order to be a better person?
That's incredible. You know? Thanks for sharing that with us today, man.
Yeah. Well, it's part of the reason why I am who I am.
Yeah, I nailed it again, Jason. Dude, that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about too and bring up is that like this idea that we have sometimes of feeling anxious or feeling nervous and stuff like that. You know, sometimes I think when I look back at it and whenever I still feel like that, I start to ask myself this question, like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing that I'm not doing? why is it that I'm anxious? What is it that I'm nervous about? You know what I mean? What is it that I'm supposed to be doing right now that I'm neglecting, or that I don't realize that it is that I should be doing? And I think a lot of the times for me, I've come to understand with my emotions is that, like, I realize that there is something I should be doing. And that's what it is that's giving me the anxiety. You know what I mean? That's what it is that's giving me that, like, fear of, like, not going forward with it, and it's like accepting the fact that there is something you should be doing. And a lot of times it is exactly that, Jason, focusing on what it is that you want to do, focusing on what it is that is important to you, and just taking action and making it happen. Right. It's the same way with our drawings too, man. Like, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to crumble it up and throw it away, but don't keep moving forward with it. See what happens. Like right now already, I've wanted to throw this thing away a couple times already, but we're going to keep moving with it. That's awesome that you said that. I like that idea of that movie and the way you think about it. The inspiration comes from everywhere too. You know what I mean? Movies, books, people, conversations with people you didn't think that you should even be talking to, saying hello to people on the street, especially that one. Listening to that voice going, go talk to that dude. Go talk to that lady. Say hello. Follow it.
Safety permitting, of course.
Of course, but still. The things that we don't do because we're so worried about, like, interpretation of what somebody might think of you, right? It's incredible. The fear. Giving into that fear. Unfortunate. It's happened for a long time for me. So here I am on the screen. I don't know if you can see my face or not, but here I'm on the screen drawing in front of everybody and chasing all that fear away.
Yeah, I'm just following along with your brush strokes and just watching what you're doing.
It's pretty fun to draw like this. It's very freeing. You know, I've enjoyed it. I started this a lot whenever I started doing, like, oil painting and stuff like that. I started drawing this way after learning to oil paint and everything. And it seems to work out pretty well. And I've developed a pretty quick approach to viewing the subject matter and getting it down on paper. Understanding that most of the time, and a lot of the times without practice, you're going to have some pretty wonky looking things that you kind of create. But with enough practice and stuff like that, you start recognizing more of these tonal values and shapes and form before you even start to worry about proportions, because it just starts falling together a little bit faster, because all they are a bunch of shapes that are true to themselves in relation to themselves in their own space. And I hope that didn't sound too confusing, but it just basically means that, like, things go where they're supposed to go because there's certain little highlights that you pay attention to, or there's certain little curves that you pay attention to in the tonal value, the way that it dissipates, or the way that it's taken on a light source, like this little white bottle right here. Now I'm going through making sure that this curve seems to be true to the reference. And so what I mean by that is, like, let's go back here. For example, this curve here. Oh, let me hold my screen. Curve here, and the angle of that head. And again, the triangle that it makes to this other reference point. The triangle that it's making to this other reference point. And the reason I drew them this way,
what about the reflecting triangle that's leading up to the top of the bottle?
Where this guy right here?
Following the linear line from that right foot on the statue, starting down at the right big toe, going all the way up to the top of the bottle, kind of intersects and creates a secondary triangle within that larger one to the bottom of the bottle.
Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Good call. So these are the things that I'm paying attention to as far as proportions go. And then you go even closer and you start to pay attention to the even smaller shapes. And their relationship to each other. And then even smaller, all these little guys. Relationship of tiny little shapes, all influenced by each other and all living in the same space. And then you start understanding that there's different ranges of value that you have to pay attention to. And I know all you guys have probably seen or follow Nico Hurtado, and in the past I haven't seen him do it a lot lately. I haven't been looking at his work a lot lately, but in the past when I would follow him, he would have all these stencils that were just crazy little, like bunch of just crazy little shapes all over the place. And there's some dots and stuff like that. But you can see what it is that he's paying attention to when you start breaking it down. He's got all these little shapes manipulated to pay attention to and different reference points for himself, like the dots or like the lines, which one is higher and lower values of tone. And his ability to be able to decipher that is incredible enough to me all on its own. But then to be able to come up with, you know, there's another way that I've seen Guy do it in his book. I think he explained it as like hatch marks, you know. The closer that the hatch mark is, the darker the value would be. And the more separated the hatch mark is the higher value of that plane. And it helps him create that shape. And then the darker values would just be very tight marks.
I think he also goes into cross hatching.
Cross hatching as well, yeah. So that would be yeah, exactly. So the cross hatching would be like the darker is, for example. I don't know per se, but just for example. And then, you know, like it's so crazy to be able to recognize that was somebody that just came up with that method for themselves, to be able to understand these terms, these shapes and the relationship to each other and the way the light is affecting the form. Nico's got an amazing ability to create depth with using multiple light sources and multiple, color theory patterns and palettes, and Guy does the same thing, but just in an entirely different subject matter. You know what I mean? And I don't know, man. I've always looked up to both of those guys. Oh, still on orange. Don't do that. I'm so glad that this thing, you can just double tap it and it goes back. Like, it's like, are you serious? That was easy. It also makes this charcoal effect, or this this painting kind of effect in Procreate that much more efficient. I remember carrying around so many different little bags and tools to be able to sit down and sketch. And like with this, man, you just go for it. So much cleaner, less messy. So what I've done here with this figure, this Buddha, is I've gone through and I put the midtone value and I'm washing it over the whole form that I've already created. I know the proportions are fairly correct. They're not exact, and I'm okay with that. I'm not looking for an entirely accurate picture here. What I'm looking for in this kind of an example is a study on the way the light is hitting these multiple forms and the way that it helps create depth, right? And I will sit down and I will do a bunch of these drawings just for the hell of it, because it helps me overall understand form that much faster. Whenever I do my sketches for my drawings for tattoos, it becomes a familiar, like, muscle memory kind of thing. Like you can see here, look how off this hand is into this angle, this hand here. Oh. It's so far off from this point of the bottle. And I'm okay with it. I can smudge it, I can move it around a little bit, and you can see now that I see that, it's just like staring at me. Like that's the only thing I see now. But I'll go through and I'll change that a little bit here and there, and it's okay. I'm not gonna freak out. I'm not gonna do what everybody thinks I'm gonna do, man, and throw away my drawing. I'm just gonna smudge it out a little bit.
Well, I hate to cut this a little bit short, Ricardo, but I do have to get rolling, man.
Okay, dude. Thank you for joining in, as always, Jason.
You're very welcome. It's always a pleasure to jump in on these and talk with you for a little bit and watch your work.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining, Jason.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome, Lauren.
Yeah, dude, it's always a pleasure, Jason. You want to give everybody a shout out before you dip out?
Sure. My name's Jason Leeser. I run the Sunday afternoon drawing group. You guys can find me on Instagram at Philly Inc. Yeah, or on any of the Reinventing the Tattoo communities. Can search for my name. Yeah, couldn't be happier to be on here with Lauren and Ricardo. Thank you guys very much. And hope everyone's got a great day.
Be safe, man.
Thank you very much.
That dude is a good dude. Awesome artist. Very insightful. You guys get a chance, you should definitely jump in on Sundays. That's where I started getting my feet wet, was with Jason on his class on Sunday. I met him and Bruno on the same day. And it's been life-changing and awesome for it. So I think we'll render out a little bit more here. I'm trying to get as close to semi-complete as possible. So I'm getting ready to start going through and start just adding some dark values and then start erasing out my highlights. That's a little bit more true. It's still a little off. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it right for the time being. I love drawing like this. It's so freeing. It's so relaxing. It's much easier than sitting down and being like, I have my microns, I have my tracing paper. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a time and place for all that. I love it. But when you're just sketching and you're trying to understand what it is that you're viewing, you're trying to interpret these forms and light sources, which is what we're covering this month. It makes it so much more relaxing. Most of the time I'll have some music playing in the background and everything like that, but I found some royalty-free stuff that I like that I think will start kind of playing in the background for some of these shows when there's some dead silence. But it's good to practice that. Something, as you all may or may not know, something with like no lyrics in it is really good for when you're trying to draw or create or relax even. So we're getting closer, a little bit closer every time. Have to admit, it's getting better. I hope all you guys out there in the crowd are doing well. I hope everybody's gonna have a good day today. How you make it the best you can. You can see here what I'm gonna do is I will start adding my darker values to the back. And it's not too important to me as far as the overall size of these strokes. I'm not too worried about that. I don't mind if it gets messy. I'm not looking for exactness right now. I'm just trying to get that form and the way the light hits it and the parts that recess into the darkness. because the light is hitting less of that form. And it turns. And as you can see, there's not too much in focal points. It looks like this area down here by the light, the bottle, and this front form of the horns is where I'll focus, and then on the table surface is where I'll focus the focal point on, which means that I'll leave a lot of these midtones exposed versus exposing the canvas, which would be the white background. I'll leave that in a midtone range. That way we can, or I will relax more so on those negative areas of the wider areas of the canvas. Getting there, getting there. Today I have a pretty big piece that I'll be working on, and the smaller ones this afternoon. Gonna be doing some fun stuff. Gonna be taking leopard print and then a phoenix and merging them together, which can be pretty cool. Can be pretty fun. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to start going back to some more rock shows. I'm missing them. I see people posting them lately, and I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. I'm ready to get back out there in the world. A lot of traveling this last year. I probably won't be doing nearly as much as I did last year this year, but it was so much fun. Okay, so let's go through and start doing some of these erasings or magic, making magic appear. All I'm doing is focusing on the highlighted areas. And I have my opacity of this eraser pretty soft. I mean, it's more towards the hard edge, but I like it softer so we can kind of go through and smudge it out if we need to. I'm not too worried about the overall exactness of this right now. Get some more mid-tone in here first. And then we'll go back in with some dark to bring it more towards the foreground. You can see how the relationship between the background and the foreground is going to come into play. Darker being pushed back into the background in this particular subject matter. However, the midtones and that negative or the erasings, as I'm calling them, is going to help push this into the foreground. Sharper, darker edges means that it'll pop out more towards you. However, there's a nice balance between where the light source is actually coming from that needs to be recognized or observed in order for it to come across as effective. Sometimes I hear myself say those things and I'm like, where the hell did that come from? Jeez. Did that just sound professional? Not sure if it did. So that needs to be a lot of darks here. You can already start to see it coming into the foreground a little bit more. I've used the square brush and Procreate almost entirely. Very rare that I'll use like any airbrush tools or any other tools other than that. I like the way you get all these little overlaps, very painterly looking, very real, by hand looking. A lot of us are trying to achieve those overall very smooth gradients and stuff like that, and that's cool. I like them a little messy looking, like a little bit of a tooth almost. Life, man. Give it life, man. Life. So you can see that cast shadow kind of coming through. The angle on this might be a little off, and that's fine. Let's go in with a white paintbrush and see what we can do. Okay, we're getting there. Just some slight knobs of highlights in this guy. And go down with the opacity, the brush size a little bit more. It's that whole push and pull with the positive and negative relationships as far as where the light is hitting the tops of the form, allowing the midtones to be that terminator edge. Making it softer and making it less of a focal point rather than that stark white that we've erased out of the bottle, that paint, that liquid text bottle. And you can see as I start to add these highlights, all these little overlapping shapes that are very smudged looking, not as tight, will really allow our eye to relax on the focal points and perceive this distance that we've established in this drawing in regards to the photo reference. And the negative areas being the whites that we're putting in right now, helping shape that form. And we're getting closer to being done for the day. Let's add a little bit more dark to this area back here in the back. There we go. It's a little better. All right, so we'll tighten up just a little edges. And there we go. I think that's what we'll call a done day there. Actually, sorry, can't walk away without doing this first. I don't know how many of you guys do the same thing. Start to be like, okay, I'm done. Nope, wait. Step back down. I have to tattoo a little bit more. The client looks at you like they're all aggravated and stuff. Like, dude, I have to do it. I'm sorry. You want a good tattoo or a really good tattoo? All right. So there's that. Now, what I'll do real quick is I'm going to go ahead and show the playthrough again real fast. And then we'll stop sharing the video. I'll say hello. Nope, actually, we're not going to share. Maybe I'm so used to sending it to my iPhone to the horseman. So let's go ahead and just video time-lapse replay. So here, you can see how, like I said, I start with that mid-tone background. And I start recognizing my highlights first, all my foreground stuff that I'm looking for. What I want the eye to focus on is exactly what it is that I start to pay attention to before I do anything else. And I'll use that as a landmark to create that depth, that field of depth that we're going for. And the way the light hits the foreground much more intensely than it does the background, how it dissipates more towards the background, and that tonality kind of effect that we're looking for. Shaping it all out, very chiseled. Talking about life. Recognizing all these little angular kind of shapes. Nothing is lines. Everything is smudged brush marks. It's all softer edges, finding those lost and found edges. And right here, this was an important one here. So you can see how there's a lot of still negative areas in the canvas. And what I go through and do is I go ahead and wash over the whole piece with this tonal kind of gradation, allowing me to start recognizing on the smaller shapes inside of those smaller forms and the dark areas that need to be established in order to help with that foreground or that sense of depth. We're talking about the proportions, recognize shapes, geometrical shapes in the image. There it was again. I went over the whole image again with a medium tone value in order to help with the overall shape and depth. There we go. All in all, it's not the most elaborate piece there is in the world, but it was a good study. And it was a successful study in a sense that I think I've accomplished what it was that I was trying to do, which is establish those tonality in our artwork. And that is by eliminating line work and focusing on recognizing our shapes, recognizing our values, foreground, midground, background, and what it takes in order to help establish that that sense of what we're talking about, the tonality in our artwork. And that will do it for today as far as my contribution to lighting. Let me stop sharing this real quick. Yeah, I think that's it. What time is it? 10:30? That's a pretty good time. I have to get ready for my next tattoo appointment. And again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate all the kind words that I get and messages from you guys. It's always a pleasure to hear from people in the lobbies. And if you can, just jump on in. You know what I mean? Let's draw together. The picture is inside of the Reinventing the Tattoo app. So if you want to, you can go in there and take a look at it, and then you can print it off. You can do whatever you want with it. Use it for a tattoo if you'd like to. Man, I don't care. Draw it and send it to me. Let's see what we got going on. Let's jump in. But my name is Ricardo Sturdivant. Thank you again for joining us on another day of Tuesday's Feelings. And Lauren, thank you so much. I don't know if you're there right now.
Yep.
But cool. Here. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I wouldn't be able to do this without you, because I would be fumbling around with all the electronics for sure.
Thanks, Ricardo.
Yeah. But again, also thank you to Sandy. Thank you to Gabe. And thank you to the big man, Guy Etchison. We wouldn't be here without you, man. You're such an inspiration. Thank you so much to the Horsemen and all of you guys for tuning in. If there's anything you want us to cover, if there's anything you want us to talk about, a little bit more tattooing, stuff like that, I might throw some more tattooing in next time and get everybody hooked in. So again,